In the opening scene, Simin is determined to leave Iran with her husband, Nasir, and their 11-year-old daughter, Afra. She believes that moving abroad will offer a better future for their family, free from the constraints and uncertainties they face in their homeland. However, Nasir refuses to leave, deeply concerned about his elderly father, who is in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease and requires constant care. With their fundamental disagreement reaching an impasse, Simon files for divorce, hoping that legal separation will allow her to leave with Afra. However, in court, the judge deems their marital issues insufficient grounds for divorce and rejects Simon's request. Forced to make a choice, Simon moves out of their home and returns to live with her parents, leaving Afra behind with Nasir. Despite her disappointment, Simon still wants to ensure that Nasir and Afra are taken care of in her absence. She helps Nasir find a caregiver for his father, Razia, a deeply religious woman from a poor suburb of Tehran. Razia's family is struggling financially, and she desperately needs the job. However, the job proves to be more than she expected, as Nasir's father requires constant attention and physical assistance. To make matters more complicated, Razia is 4 months pregnant. The physical demands of the job, lifting, cleaning, and ensuring the safety of a man with severe dementia, take a toll on her. She also worries about religious implications, as caring for an elderly man involves duties she is unsure are permissible under Islamic law. She calls a religious hotline in secret to ask if it is a sin to undress and clean a man who is not her husband. When she is assured it is acceptable in cases of necessity, she reluctantly continues the job. Since she cannot leave her own child at home, Razia brings her young daughter, Sofia, with her. The little girl quietly follows her mother around, witnessing the struggles of both her mother's job and their precarious financial situation. One afternoon, as Razia performs her daily duties, she asks Sofia to help by taking out the trash. As the little girl drags the heavy bag down the stairs, it suddenly bursts open, spilling garbage all over the steps. Razia hurriedly cleans up the mess, exhausted but determined to keep everything in order. But just as she finishes, she realizes something is terribly wrong. Nasir's father is missing. Panic surges through her. She frantically searches the apartment, calling out for him, but there is no response. Heart pounding, she rushes out onto the street. The next day, Nasir and Afra return home after a day of work and school, expecting to resume their daily routine. However, what they discover is anything but normal. Nasir's father is lying unconscious on the floor of his bedroom, tied to the bed. His frail body is unmoving, and the scene is chaotic. Razia and her daughter Sofia are nowhere to be found. Nasir's heart races with panic as he rushes to check his father's condition, praying he is still alive. It's a traumatic sight, and Nasir is furious. He immediately jumps to conclusions, accusing Razia of neglecting his father and stealing money from the house. The accusation cuts deep, but neither Nasir nor Razia knows the truth. Simin had taken some of the money to pay for movers to take some of her furniture as part of her separation from Nasir. When Razia returns to the apartment, Nasir confronts her in a fury, demanding that she leave. She tries to explain that she is owed the rest of her payment for the work, but Nasir's anger consumes him. He refuses to listen to her, pushing Razia out of the apartment. The force sends her tumbling into the stairwell outside, bruised and humiliated. Hojat, Razia's husband, later calls Simin to inform her that Razia is in the hospital, suffering from severe injuries. It is also revealed that Razia has had a miscarriage, likely as a result of the physical and emotional stress caused by the events. The revelation sends shockwaves through Simon. At the hospital, Simon and Nasir go to check on Razia. They are confronted by Hojat, Razia's hot-tempered and aggressive husband. The man, consumed by grief and rage, accuses Nasir of causing the miscarriage, claiming that his treatment of Razia was the direct cause of the tragedy. The situation escalates quickly, and Hojat physically confronts Nasir, shaking him in an attempt to force an admission of guilt. In a tense courtroom scene, Nasir is summoned before a criminal judge to face accusations of causing the miscarriage. If it is proven that Nasir knew about Razia's pregnancy and his actions led directly to the loss of her child, he could face serious charges, including murder of an unborn infant. The stakes have never been higher, and the courtroom becomes a battleground where emotions run high on both sides. As the legal proceedings unfold, Nasir tries to defend himself by accusing Razia of neglecting his father, hoping to justify his actions in front of the judge. The situation grows more volatile as Hojat continues to attack Nasir with physical threats and angry outbursts. Amid the chaos, Afra's teacher, Mrs. Gahre, is called to give her statement. She had been tutoring Afra at the apartment when Razia first arrived. Mrs. Gahre unwittingly provides a crucial piece of the puzzle. She reveals that during one of their early conversations, Razia had mentioned that she was 4 months pregnant. At the time, Mrs. Gahre had recommended an obstetrician-gynecologist who could do a sonogram. This statement, however, creates a rift. Nasir becomes furious when he realizes that Mrs. Gahre's comments, which he thought were private, have now been used against him. The situation grows more complicated as both sides fight for their truth, with Nasir trying to assert his innocence while Hojat's temper continues to fuel the conflict. As the tension in the courtroom escalates, Hojat, in a fit of rage, has another outburst. The judge orders him to be removed from the proceedings, and he is arrested right there in the courtroom. The atmosphere is charged with emotion as everyone watches the scene unfold. In an attempt to calm things down, Razia pleads with the judge, explaining that Hojat has bipolar disorder and is on medication. She begs for leniency, telling the court that his aggressive behavior is often linked to his mental health struggles, which he's trying to manage with his medication. Seeing Razia's distress, Nasir begins to feel pity for her. Nasir asks the judge not to jail Hojat, wanting to avoid further escalation. His compassion for Razia grows as he realizes that the emotional toll on her is immense. Later, Nasir learns from Sofia, Razia's young daughter, that the reason Razia had been absent from work the previous day was not due to negligence, as he had initially thought. Instead, Razia had gone to visit a physician, a fact she had avoided revealing earlier. Meanwhile, Afra, feeling conflicted after everything that has happened, asks her father, "Did you really not know that Razia was pregnant?" She confesses that her mother believes he knew, and that Simon is trying to turn her against him. Nasir, however, maintains his innocence, firmly denying that he knew about Razia's pregnancy. He explains that Simin is simply trying to manipulate Afra's feelings and create tension between them, but Afra is left unsure, caught between the differing accounts of her parents. To further defend himself, Nasir demonstrates to the investigators that it's unlikely he could have physically pushed Razia out of the door in the way she had described, explaining the mechanics of the situation. He physically shows how she would have fallen differently if he had pushed her, hoping to clear his name of any intentional harm. However, this only angers Hojat more, who is convinced that Nasir is lying and continues to fuel the fiery conflict between them. Things take a turn when Hojat shows up at Afra's school, confronting her and harassing her teacher, Mrs. Gahre, accusing her of lying under oath in court. Hojat's behavior becomes increasingly erratic, and his presence in the school creates a sense of fear and unease. Simin, who is worried about Afra's safety, fears that the situation is spiraling out of control and that her daughter is no longer safe around the volatile nature of Hojat and the growing tensions within the family. In an attempt to make the case go away, Simin proposes that Nasir pay restitution for the loss of Razia's child, believing that this will help settle the matter and protect Afra from further emotional turmoil. Nasir is initially outraged by Simon's suggestion, feeling it would be a sign of weakness and a way to avoid addressing the core issues of their marriage. His pride prevents him from accepting her proposal, and the rift between them deepens. Both Simin and Nader blame each other for the mess they are in, their marriage continuing to disintegrate with each passing day. As the tension continues to mount, Afra is left struggling with her own confusion and doubts. One evening, she overhears Nasir leaving a voicemail for Mrs. Gahre, asking for the name of the obstetrician-gynecologist whose contact information she had given to Razia during the first day she started working for him. Afra's heart sinks as she processes what she has just heard. If her father hadn't known about Razia's pregnancy, then how could he possibly have known this detail about the doctor? The revelation shakes her, and she confronts Nasir directly. How could you have heard this if you said you didn't hear the conversation? In a moment of vulnerability, Nasir admits the truth. He did hear the conversation, but was forced to lie about it in order to avoid legal consequences. Was what would happen to Afra if he were imprisoned. Nasir's confession leaves Afra feeling conflicted. While she now understands her father's motives, the truth makes her realize just how deep the layers of deception have gone. Meanwhile, Mrs. Gahray, aware of Nasir's lie, becomes troubled by the situation. Her conscience weighs heavily on her, and she decides to withdraw her statement to the court, telling the judge about the phone call Nasir made to her. This admission to the judge sends the entire case into disarray. The judge now questions Nasir, demanding to know how he could have known about the obstetrician-gynecologist if he had not overheard the conversation. Nasir, under immense pressure, tries to cover his tracks. He claims that Afra was the one who told him about the doctor's name. The judge, skeptical of this explanation, tells Nasir to send Afra into his office to speak for herself. Nasir hesitates, but ultimately he decides to comply, sending Afra in without preparing her to lie for him. This decision shows his vulnerability, as he knows that he is now relying on his daughter's innocence to protect him. As the questioning begins, Afra tells the judge what she believes to be the truth, protecting her father even though she doesn't fully understand the situation herself. The judge, seeing her sincere confusion and uncoached answers, decides to believe her and accept her testimony, even though it is a lie meant to protect Nasir. The emotional and moral complexities of the case deepen, and Afra becomes an unwilling pawn in a game of legal and personal consequences, caught between the love for her father and the weight of the lies that now entangle their family. In a tense moment of emotional conflict, Seaman attempts to negotiate a settlement with Hojat, hoping that financial compensation might resolve the escalating situation and allow their families to move on without further damage. However, Razia, now clearly conflicted and in deep emotional turmoil, reveals something crucial to Seaman that changes everything. She has serious doubts about whether Nasir's actions caused the miscarriage. Razia explains that, before the incident with Nasir, she had been hit by a car while trying to retrieve Nasir's father, who had wandered outside the apartment. It was that very night when Razia began experiencing the first symptoms of the miscarriage, and she wonders whether it was the accident that caused the miscarriage, not Nasir's push. Seaman, taken aback by Razia's revelation, tries to process this new information. Razia's doubts shake her, and she realizes that Nasir might not be entirely to blame after all. The tension between the families reaches a boiling point. In another heated argument, Seaman is forced to make a difficult decision. She demands that Afra leave with her, unable to stand the continuous conflict between the parents and the growing uncertainty about their future. Nasir, though emotionally exhausted, agrees to the payment. In a final attempt to secure his position, he asks Razia to swear on the Quran that he was indeed the cause of her miscarriage. However, Razia refuses, as she now harbors doubts about her previous claims. The weight of her conscience and the uncertainty surrounding the truth prevent her from swearing on the Quran, knowing she can no longer fully confirm that Nasir was responsible. Hojat, in a fit of frustration and desperation, tries to force Razia into making a sworn statement, worried that dishonor in front of his creditors could destroy him further. Unable to control his anger, he begins hitting himself repeatedly, overwhelmed by his sense of helplessness and rage. His outbursts intensify the emotional chaos in the room, and it becomes evident that the family is falling apart in every possible way. Later, in the final scene, the family court becomes the stage for the final unraveling of the marriage between Nasir and Simon. They have filed for divorce once again, and this time, the judge makes their separation official and permanent. The weight of the decision hangs heavy in the room as the judge now turns his attention to Afra, who has remained at the heart of this painful conflict. The judge asks Afra who she would like to live with, her mother or her father. Afra hesitates for a long moment before finally speaking. She tells the judge that she has made her decision, but before revealing it, she asks that her parents be told to wait outside. This request signals her desire to have a private moment of clarity and to make the decision that feels right for her, away from the pressure of her parents' strained relationship. The judge agrees, and Nasir and Seaman are ushered out of the room, leaving Afra alone with the judge. The scene closes with Afra standing at a crossroads, fully aware of the monumental impact her decision will have on the family's future. The emotional toll of the entire ordeal is clear in her expression, as she prepares to make a decision that will change everything. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I were in Afra's place. What about you? Who do you think Afra should go with? Her mother or her father? Let me know in the comments below.